Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. Happy June 1st. We made it to June 2021, and this is your daily medicine transmission. It is Tuesday. I hope you had a great extended weekend. You were able to if you're really able to honor the sacrifice of all of the soldiers in the military and, under the radar, there's the soldiers that we don't necessarily see in uniform that have still made sacrifices for this country and for our freedom and the Constitution of the United States, which is actually very, I don't think people realize how incredibly unique our Constitution and Bill of Rights is. Just to give you perspective, Great Britain or England, they don't have a Bill of Rights. So whatever you got into this weekend, I hope that it was relaxing, refreshing, and it gave you time to really reflect on what we're all here to do. So welcome back to subscribers, my supporters. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're new here, especially if you're here as a result of the Mercury Retrograde Alchemy Summit, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And as always, I like to remind people that if you really like this content, if you find it inspiring, even if you don't, sometimes I get some downvotes, and that's okay too. Whenever you interact with this content in any way, when you subscribe to the channels, when you when you share, when you comment, that all actually influences the AI algorithm that then makes a decision about what information, what content to suggest to a larger audience. And so it's more likely to be viewed by new people. So that's one way that you can really support this work and the channels that you happen to find this content on. And if you are interested in supporting monetarily this particular work, besides booking a reading, of course, that is a very intimate one-on-one relationship between me and you as the client. But if you want to support this work, these daily medicine transmissions, the weekly astrology reports, and any exclusive content, you can go to Subscribestar. You can subscribe for $3 a month and you get all of this content. And you also support the creation of this content monetarily, which is also important. So let's get right into it. It's June 1st. It is, we are having a third quarter square tomorrow morning, 3:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So very late in the evening on the West Coast into the morning time, the AM time after midnight. And that is our crisis in consciousness. And as we lead up to this, let's backtrack just a little bit and we'll get into the chart here in a moment. But the title of today's transmission is enter through the narrow gate. And there is actually a New Testament Bible verse that is related to this, and it's we can think about it too in a more simplified way rather than getting into the actual verse. You can see it. I posted it on Facebook along with the link to this transmission, but it's basically, entering the kingdom of heaven is like going through the eye of the needle, right? And the path is absolutely starting to narrow. So yesterday we had some major transits that really just kind of peaked over the whole weekend. Was yesterday. Mars in Cancer was in an exact trine to Neptune in Pisces. Almost a little bit too full in that case. And we'll see in the intuitive reading how this is being reflected as a satiating point emotionally and even spiritually. And also too, the sun met the moon's north node as well. And so it really highlighted, illuminated, and allowed us to fulfill our own self-expression through the real drive that the north node represents, pulling us in that direction of Gemini in order for our soul to evolve and grow. So the sun met the north node, which is the pioneer of the newly open lands, right? We are moving in this direction in order to grow, which is so counterintuitive to so much that's happening right now in terms of unification and alchemy and all the Sagittarius energy that represents that, the collective belief systems. And with that south node, full moon eclipse, man, it was so powerful. And I will say that it's aspecting my natal chart so strongly as well as the Mercury now retrograde that happened on the 29th is now in its retrograde motion. It's time to review some things, isn't it? Time to review some things, go back over our notes, reorient ourselves on a mental and magical level, right? Mercury is the mind, but it is really the access to the logos, and the Gemini archetype is the mastery of the duality in order to create something down the line. But there has to be an acknowledgement of the dual potential that exists before we can even get to the unification and the alchemy. And so on a collective level, especially because this is the nodal axis of the moon, there's something here that we've talked about this last week, that lunar eclipse has really primed us to release these really strong collective belief systems that need to be shuffled out of the way in order to make new space for new things to grow, for a new belief system to emerge that we can all eventually alchemize from. But it requires that we let go of very strongly held belief systems. I mean, this is Sagittarius represents the alchemy that then leads to the gold, right? And once you get to that situation, or you get to that point, it's very difficult to break those bonds of physical reality. It's like trying to break a covalent bond, right? That's the bond of molecular bonding, right? When atoms share electrons in order to find homeostasis and balance within themselves, or even the lattice work of solids that are brought together by the opposite charge of ions, bringing atoms together into actual salts, into minerals, things that are very, very hard to break apart on an atomic level. This is what we are doing with the Sagittarian energy, of course, and it's so strong that it takes incredible amounts of energy in order to break those bonds and go back over and create something new. So we don't want to minimize how incredibly important this is, but also how much energy it actually takes in order to break these bonds, to break down something as strong as collective belief systems, these belief systems that we base our entire matrix upon. It takes a lot. Excuse me. It takes a lot. So it's not to diminish how much energy and how much work. And this is why the narrow gateway, right? If you, and where Mercury is right now, I cannot stress enough, Mercury in a retrograde at the degree of Gemini that represents the pruning back of all of this wild expansion. It's important to take in data. It's important to, especially from an empirical perspective, we don't want to necessarily push away relevant data in order to, create our model and to analyze it. That's the Virgo energy, is the analysis. But we want to, at some point, prune back the aspects that are not necessary, right? We talked about this a lot because this is where Mercury not only slowed down in station, but this is, where it's technically going retrograde, is in this pruning. And this is where Venus and Mercury came together in that conjunction, is at this degree. And so she even is supporting it in our very real, very palpable material reality, the aspect of reality that leads to how we feel, what we pick up with our five senses, what we feel is harmonious and beautiful in our lives, what we value, who we value. All of this is represented by Venus, and there's a strong feminine signature in today's transmission. And this is where Mercury and Venus came together. She caught up to a stationing Mercury that was pretty much at a standstill. They met at this degree, and then Mercury goes back. And so there was a beautiful moment. It was an alignment and in some ways a kiss, right? They're just like, here, this is, I'm going to give you something very palpable, something that you can actually attach to with your five senses that allows you to, and you as in all of us, to identify what needs to start being cut back. How are we going to create the space for us to move through this narrow pathway? And it does mean that we have to start, using that machete and pruning some things back so we can at least see the narrow pathway that we're going down, because it may not be a pathway that we have gone down before. And that's most likely the case with a south node lunar eclipse in the mix. It's something that we haven't done before. It's a place that we haven't been before. It's a pathway that has been grown over, but now we're cutting it away, and we realize that this is going to get us where we need to go. So, but this trine with Neptune and Mars, these 2 degrees of Pisces and Cancer, very emotional, very much, especially with Cancer. We are talking about the lattice work of our familial bonds, of the place where we come from. It is the container in which our emotional vulnerability and our self-esteem and our personality really develops. And with Mars here, it has been a mixed blessing, to be perfectly honest, in my opinion. For as much as it's really given us this protective mechanism here, and this ambition and drive to get somewhere, to protect each other, to protect our families and that community that we feel very emotionally connected to. It also, and there's been a strong healing component. Mars has been transiting my 6th house, so Aquarian rising people, Mars has been transiting the 6th house. And you don't have to be Aquarius rising to have your actual 6th house be in Cancer. So that's important to understand. That's whole sign astrology, when it's just based off the sign of your ascendant and it's equally distributed. But when we use a more specific house system, like I use the Placidus house system, there are plenty others out there that show distinct degrees of these house cusps. I'm just saying here that most Aquarians, Mars is transiting their 6th house. So it's giving us a lot of ambition and drive and bravery and courage to do the really difficult self-disciplining things that we need to do. But also too, there's a protective mechanism here with Mars and Cancer, but it's also been very spiky, right? And it's been very direct and kind of doesn't care about how anybody else necessarily feels outside this little realm and how it's going to impact us as well. But this particular trine with Neptune and Pisces, they've both moved in now to this 23 to 24 degrees of Pisces when they came into connection. And both of these degrees are very, very specific in their imagery of people living in close connection on an island surrounded by the vast ocean. We are now really starting to consolidate. And that is the 2nd half of Cancer, by the way. Consolidation, pulling together. It's like tightening the weaving that holds this vessel tighter, right? Makes it more water resistant, right? So things aren't leaking out. Remember, we talked about the basement, that I used my basement as an analogy for making sure that there are proper channels for these emotional, spiritual energy to flow through, and it's not either flooding us or leaking all over the place. It's important that we have this. This trine was so powerful, and it really gave us an emotional and feeling-based fullness of what we need to do and how we can really give ourselves to this conscious ideal, which has to do with interdependence, learning about our dharma. What are our limitations? What are our strengths? How can we weave them together into an interdependent scenario where we are all working together within the lattice structure of our most important bonds, our most important spiritual emotional bonds. So home and family, this could be very directed to you. Like for me, the eclipse energy is in my 4th house, the solar eclipse in my 4th house. So you could see it that way. And that, again, Aquarian rising people, this is all these same dynamics going down the pipeline. But that trine was so powerful and so satiating. Wow. And it really did give us an imprint on some level of what we need to do. And this is why the pathway is narrow and why we're consolidating our power and being very clear with ourselves. Because once this solar eclipse really hits, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of opportunities to create. There's going to be a lot of options to assimilate that is going to, we're going to feel it, right? With the eclipse, right? We had the annular eclipse. So there's a ring of fire. It's not a total solar eclipse, but we can recognize that the moon is going to block the full illumination of sun. So it's going to be something that we definitely feel within us. We're going to have an emotional and intuitive realization of all of these options that we can relate to and have everything that we need. There's going to be this really drastic shift during this time. In a seemingly positive way. We're going to get a lot, right? And the trick is not to waste any of it, which is very possible when you have so many options to assimilate into your immediate environment. So in some ways, this eclipse will in some way this eclipse will overshadow the fullness of all of these options, but we will see it and feel it. And like I said, with all these eclipses, they last for, the duration of the eclipse cycle. So the next 6 months is going to percolate and really ripple out into our awareness and into our collective awareness. Wow, it's going to be intense. And so, but the path is narrowing. And with Saturn in retrograde and another Saturn-Uranus square that is happening on the 12th, we have right before that, asteroid Ceres is going to meet Uranus in Taurus. So, Ceres is the goddess of the grain. She is the function of what nourishes us, right? The actual agricultural cycle of growth and harvest, and then the inevitable yin phase, pulling back, consolidating. This is what Ceres represents, but she is what provides our nourishment, right? The grain, what feeds us, what nourishes us, what sustains us. She's going to, this is Gaia, right? And she's going to be meeting with Uranus in Taurus, the fixed earth sign, right after the eclipse. So just be prepared. There are so many earth changes. And if you follow any of that stuff, right, you follow the solar weather, you follow the tectonic shifts, if you follow geology at all, then you know that there has been a lot of deep earthquake activity. There have been a lot of volcanoes erupting all over the world. And so when Ceres meets Uranus in Taurus, right after the eclipse, and we know that eclipses oftentimes will stimulate these massive shifts in physical and energetic, and it doesn't matter. They're pretty much one and the same. It's just by the time the physical is erupting or certainly making itself known, we know that the energetic shift has already happened. So just keep in mind now as we move into, we're, the last half and then soon the very last quarter of this lunar cycle, we're going to be met with a lot more, upheaval, a lot more disruption. And some people are not going to handle this well, as with every shift and change. And some people are going to see this as a huge win, whatever it is. And we have to remember that it's not the end, right? This is an eclipse cycle. And so whatever is happening now is going to, like I said, it's going to ripple out over time. And it's going to be in October when Pluto and Saturn station direct that we're really going to need whatever is transpiring in this eclipse cycle right now. Whatever's happening right now in this eclipse cycle, even if it has its own impact in the present moment, as it does, keep in mind, October is when it's really going to make a difference. We're going to reflect back on this time and utilize that and apply it to when Saturn and Pluto station direct. Because right now, this is all review. Even with Mercury retrograde, we're going over it in the mind. We're pruning back. Saturn is now constricting, right? That tunnel is narrowing. It's making it, again, we can leave. We can certainly leave. And many people are going to do that. They're going to take another route around this pathway instead of allowing themselves to move through it. And that's okay. Everybody has to make their decisions and their choices, and we don't know what their soul contract really is. We only know our own. And so we have to be aware of that, but know that this is that tunnel is constricting. It's narrowing, and it's in this narrow tunnel that we make our way to our ascended self. Our evolved self. And of course, Pluto is retrograding all the way back to where it was in November of 2020. So we're going over all of the territory that really started off with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January of 2020, which was, the beginning of the end, basically, in terms of this matrix that we're all operating under. That was the beginning of the end, the solidification of the destruction. And Pluto's going back over it. Saturn is retrograde. So these are really large energies that are going through a review period, not to mention having, Mercury retrograde in its home sign of Gemini in an air elemental year. It's really important that we are taking the time to be aware of what our narrow pathway really is. And so yesterday, with that trine between Mars and Neptune, it was a really clear indication internally, emotionally, spiritually, and with that bravado behind it. And as we're going to see here, Mars has moved from the Castor of the Gemini twins, is now moved into the Pollux, which was the immortal of the two twins. And I'll talk all about that as we look at the chart. So I'm going to actually do that. And that way we can have some frame of reference here for what we are looking at. So I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you for joining me and being here. Here we go. Here's today's chart. This is the 1st of June. Now, okay. And we're going to look at a lot of fixed star energy. So our moon has moved from Aquarius into Pisces this morning, actually. So right now we're going to look first as the moon was in a trine to Venus at the very last degrees of Gemini before she moves into Cancer tomorrow, right? And she is... Woo boy. Right now she is weaving. She's weaving that lattice structure that Cancer represents. She is tying it all together just like a mockingbird, right? It's not an imitation. It's a literal weaving of all these different melodies, right? And pulling them all together, and eventually we'll consolidate it. But for now, it's just the weaving of the basket, weaving of the container. And the moon in Aquarius in a trine to this location early this morning before she moves into Pisces. The moon moves into Pisces. This is a moment of a chrysalis moment, right? The butterfly emerging from the chrysalis. And it's about utter transformation, right? This is a complete transformation for this butterfly from a caterpillar into a butterfly. It has to go into its cocoon and really come out as a completely different being. And it's about transforming the character of our consciousness when we're talking about Aquarius. And what are we altering in this moment? Structural patterns of our lives, especially with the moon. So structural patterns of our own consciousness are being transformed, and the types of relationships. Oh my gosh. And with Venus involved, the types of relationships. It became very clear who we are connected to, who we want to invest our energy into, what relationships we want to invest our energy into. What is it that is going to strengthen those Cancer bonds when Venus gets into Cancer tomorrow with a third quarter square Sun and the Moon. So this was a beautiful trine right in the early morning hours, as you can see here, 2:23 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this was last night on the West Coast, 11:30 before we even get into the AM time. And so this is a beautiful, this trine is beautiful. It didn't take anything. It was just a natural, cohesive and supportive connection with these two feminine archetypes of the moon, the high priestess within us, and also the empress, right? Venus, the goddess of love. And she is, like I said, weaving these pieces together, taking all of these aspects and bringing them together. While Mercury, of course, is doing the work of the magician, which right now is, again, reviewing, going back over the notes, pruning, right? Cutting back things that are just going to take energy away from what we're trying to grow, which is the fruit that bears the seed of the next cycle. So we then move into Pisces. So it's gone from this kind of, moon in Aquarius is kind of aloof. It's, I don't want to say it's detached emotionally, but we are not identified with our emotions when the moon is in Aquarius. It's a very capable position in terms of using the emotional energy, being the water bearer, holding this energy, being in coherence with it rather than identifying with it. But then we move into Pisces, and then there is really no difference at this point. So there are some interesting connections here. So we're going to first, here's our moon coming into Pisces, and what does it do? It meets Jupiter. So I've been, this degree has been really fascinating to me, because this degree of Pisces, 2 degrees Pisces, is the Sabian symbol is a squirrel hiding from hunters, right? And it's the idea that when we are all bound together by one consciousness, by this really basic field of consciousness that is the Akash, which is the transcendental experience of returning to source, right? The ocean that every single separate water molecule is actually a part of and inseparable from. There is a necessity to take some caution, right, as a human being or any kind of animal in this situation. And so there is we have to find ways to hide ourselves, to shield ourselves in this moment. And in some ways, Jupiter has been kind of an ally in terms of being an umbrella for this moment. But I really get the sense now, something that has really come forward today specifically is that there's kind of no hiding from Jupiter either. And so as much as we, as a squirrel, for instance, maybe we want to hide from this, the karma, right? Because what is the 12th house in Pisces is the karma of the collective. There's no hiding from it, right? There's no getting away from every decision we've ever made in our lives, and the impact that it has on everything else around us. And so in some ways, where it may provide, it depends on it depends on Jupiter, doesn't it? It depends on the leader of our collective value system, doesn't it? Because, on one hand, maybe Jupiter will hide the squirrel if it favors the squirrel. But on the other hand, if Jupiter does not favor that squirrel, whatever that squirrel is, there's no hiding. There's definitely no hiding. And Jupiter rules Pisces as well. So there's kind of no getting away in some ways you can't hide from yourself, and you certainly can't hide from God or source creator, and you can't hide from your own decisions, whatever they are. They eventually come back around. And so this moon meeting Jupiter today, and in a conjunction with Fomalhaut, we can go right into that actually. This is a great segue into Fomalhaut. Right here, the mouth of the great fish. Let me make sure it's working here. Yes, it is. Alrighty here. So, Fomalhaut, it's one of the 4 royal stars. It is in relation to Archangel Gabriel. Okay. And what was Archangel Gabriel? Has the trumpet, right? Is the messenger. Gabriel was all throughout, spiritual, and religious symbolism, through the Bible. Gabriel is in Islam. In the New Age community, certainly it has been utilized too as a messenger type of energy, and it's connected to these 4 royal stars, and Fomalhaut in Pisces is one of them. It's the heel of the right foot. It's interesting. I have to look more into that in terms of what it represents from a medical astrology standpoint. But what I will say here is that it's the messenger, right? It is Gabriel is the one that, basically told showed himself to the shepherd and said, this is, about Jesus's birth, right? Was able to come forward and give the message, right? Give the good news, right? Gabriel showed themselves to Daniel in the Old Testament, and helped Daniel interpret his dreams, right? His prophetic dreams. So, and Gabriel came to Muhammad, right, and was the one that basically helped, gave him all of the prophecy that Muhammad supposedly was able to acquire in this cave, right? So there's no hiding. And as the moon crosses this moment, the great fish, right? The mouth of the great fish, which actually, if you want to look and even more into the Pisces, you can see here's the great fish, opens its mouth and receives the water from the Aquarian vessel, okay? Receives the water. Which seems very strange considering that it's a fish that's swimming in the water. But, how does a fish actually breathe? Well, the water passes over their gills, and that's how they get oxygen. So you can kind of see it that way as well. It's not so much swallowing the water, but everything moves through the fish. And in fact, it has to move through the water and take the water in order to get the oxygen to breathe. There's a lot of different ways that we can make sense of this imagery, but it's important to look at that the moon is crossing this point, and is also, Jupiter is very close to this point as well. So in a couple weeks we'll be exact, but it's pretty much within the 2-degree orb of Fomalhaut now. And so again, there's no getting away from it, and there's no way to not take in the fullness of everything that there is. And so Jupiter, it really depends on Jupiter and these collective belief systems. But as the ruler of Sagittarius, and the fact that this eclipse was on this south node, and we are letting go of these really, really strong collective belief systems in order to make way for something new to come about, I would say that Jupiter is in fact not, shielding some, but also at the same time just very painfully making everything come to the surface, right? And the great fish. It's so interesting. And from there, the moon is going to sextile. We'll go back here. The moon is going to sextile Ceres, asteroid Ceres as well. And we are being, this linking is about humanity. It's the linking of humanity. And this is where Ceres is, right? This moment, this in Taurus, this compassionate linking of all humanity. It doesn't matter what side we're on in the war, right? It doesn't matter where we find ourselves, in terms of, the dualistic perspective, right? What side we're on, what political affiliation, what groups we identify with. At the end of the day, we're all here on this planet together, and so we have value, and we have to treat each other that way. And so the moon is when in this sextile to Ceres today, again, there's this weaving that's happening and this linking that's happening that's going to make our bonds so strong. And with Jupiter, as much as it seems that is not very benefic when it is telling all the hunters, hey, there's the squirrel hiding in the maybe the hunters need to eat, right? Maybe there is a reason that they are looking for the squirrel hiding from the hunters. And Jupiter is making it all very clear now. It's just like, hey, there's no hiding here. There's no hiding from yourself. And there's no hiding from the decisions that you've made. And there's certainly no hiding from the impact that it has on the other people that you have led to believe, that you had this intention. So it's just something to keep in mind here with Jupiter in the rulership of Pisces, right? Jupiter is the co-ruler of Pisces. So, Gabriel, right? Sounding the horn, the judgment, right? That's also Gabriel shows up at the judgment day, right? Sounds the horn, and, we have the rapture, whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to put it all in this like Christian or this Judeo-Christian iconography. It's just what is coming to mind in terms of how to wrap our minds around what these archetypes represent. So, Yeah, there's no getting away, is there? There's no getting away. And this is why this trine with Mars and Neptune yesterday was so important and just so aptly timed. I mean, all of these cycles are fixed points in time. It's really how we engage with them that makes the most difference. And this was a really beautiful opportunity to see how it's really about each of our own personal dharma coming together and realizing what our role is to play in this much larger process that Neptune in Pisces is representing, which is we all have to go back to source. We all have to give ourselves on some level back to the end of this cycle and our participation in it. And Neptune is making it, really easy to get lost and escapism and all of the addiction, propaganda, all of that aspect of Neptune and Pisces. But it also, with Mars there, is giving us some allowing our ego consciousness, the warrior part of us to see and to have some kind of footing, be like, okay, I can't control everything that's happening out here in the ocean necessarily, but I can have an impact on what's happening in this process of interdependence within this vast collective consciousness. That's all we have. That's really our role right now. Starseed, Lightworker, Wanderer, Truth Teller. It doesn't matter what role, Indigo, Crystal Child, Rainbow Child, doesn't matter. Whatever our role is, it's about finding it, acknowledging it, and then living it to our fullness. Okay, so Moon in Pisces, it makes it really difficult to separate ourselves emotionally from everything else. But I will say as well that it also allows us to be so divinely inspired as well on a level that is right to the heart of things, right into our intuitive nature, into our feeling self. So we don't have a ton of transits today. That's the thing. Like, we have that moon meeting Jupiter, like I said, and then it's going to sextile Ceres later today, and that is about it. So I want to also talk about, maybe we get here. Yeah, Ceres is 10 degrees Taurus. So that means tomorrow that the moon is going to also sextile Uranus. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. So a couple things. Let's look a little bit more at some fixed star energy, because we also have Venus now at Betelgeuse in the armpit of Orion. One of the most vulnerable positions on the human body is that brachial axis in the armpit. If you know what I'm talking about, there are nerve endings, there are blood vessels, there are lymph nodes, right? This is a very Orion as the hunter and warrior, to raise his weapon like that and to make all of this very vulnerable, means that the warrior knows exactly where he's striking and feels confident in that way. Hold on one second, guys. All right, so yes, that makes it even worse. Okay, so we have Venus in conjunction to Betelgeuse today, and we also have Venus in conjunction with Polaris, the North Star, which is at the tail. Let's look at this here, is also at the tail of Ursa Minor, the little bear, right? And so the Polaris is also the North Star because it's at our north celestial pole from our axis. And of course, this changes because of the precession of the equinoxes, and that changes because we are on a rotational tilt, right, on our axis. And when it rotates, any planet rotates, any body rotates on an axis, it has a wobble. And this is why our North Pole is facing in a new place than it was thousands of years ago. I wouldn't say the whole thing. The whole cycle of the precession of the equinoxes is 26,000 years. But our last North Star was Alpha Draconis, or Tubin, right? Tubin. So that's something to consider as well, that it changes over time. But right now, it's the tail of the little bear. And this is where Venus is right now. Venus is in conjunction with both of these positions. And as she is weaving together all of the sounds, all of the ideas, all of the transmissions, everything in terms of ideas and the manifestation of our conceptualization of reality, it's getting woven together, right, into some sort of container, which is the Cancer container. It moves into Cancer tomorrow. And so Betelgeuse, or Betelgeuse, right, the right armpit of Orion, it actually rules the navel. Talk about self-discipline, talk about the Orion starseed nature, right? Now, the star in ancient astrology is pretty strong, and Betelgeuse is one of the largest stars that we know of, right? And it's probably going to go supernova sometime in our lifetime, which means it's going to, and it's huge. It's already a huge star, and then it's going to explode. And the reason that astronomers suspect this is because it's actually getting smaller and dimmer. And this is what happens when a star is dying. It actually starts to contract on itself because there's not enough pressure from the active fusion process of hydrogen into helium in order to withstand the gravity of its density and mass. And so it starts to contract in on itself. Anyway, this star represents either like martial honor and wealth, or it's also carnage and war. You know what I mean? Because it is the raised weapon, and the navel, and that self-discipline, that the willpower that's in the solar plexus chakra is really the resonance of the Orion starseed. So if you didn't get a chance to watch my presentation over the Mercury retrograde alchemy summit, I really, it's still going to be up. I don't know if you can still register after the fact. I will find out. But this Venus in this position, I mean, it's really about enacting that willpower, that self-discipline, the courage that is in our solar plexus to really be the fullness of who we are, and have the ability to raise whatever weapon. And so we don't have to think about it necessarily that way. We know that what's happening right now with Venus is she's pulling together all of these pieces to come into some measure of consolidation and tightening. And I say that very loosely, and tightening. Oh my God. I say that loosely because we don't want to get so tight that we can't allow ourselves to still work with the Gemini energy, especially because the sun is still here for a while now. And also the North Node is here, and Mercury is retrograde. So we don't want to necessarily tighten so much that we don't engage ourselves in our immediate environment, but we do need to, like I said, the path is narrowing, right? And the weaving is coming together, and we are starting to get a clear picture. And this conjunction with Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse with Venus is allowing us to feel and use our sensitivity to find where that power really lies within us. And it is about, where is our power, our personal power? It's the nadir. It is the fourth house cusp. And so the other conjunction is Polaris, right? The North Star, the tip of the little bear. And so this is offering guidance as well. And so we have these two connections with Venus today that are really, and so tap into your actual feeling self, and not your emotional feeling, but your physical feeling, your senses, right? And it can be more than your five senses, but your sensitivity to the world around you, to what and who you value in your life, your relationships, the projects that matter to you, your resources on every level. This is helping us weave all of that together to find this strength and discipline at the center of who we are. And the nadir, the fourth house cusp, is where we draw our personal power. And at the same time, Polaris is pointing the way, right? Giving us guidance to this. And so pay attention here, right? Pay attention to how you feel in your body. Pay attention to the synchronicities. Pay attention to your resources and what they're telling you, the relationships, the quality of your relationships, what that's telling you, because this is going to make a big difference. We can't necessarily rely just on our mind right now, because our minds are doing something different. It's the reorientation and the review period of Mercury retrograde, cutting all the things back that are extraneous that we don't need to give our energy to. And at the same time, reinforcing the place where we're going to actually feel the most powerful. Okay, so that's the astrology aspect of today, right? Wow. I'm even just like, wow. Okay, so we got that Venus aspect, and here we are with Mars. Okay, Mars is in conjunction now with Pollux, which is the immortal twin of the Gemini twins, right? And again, this is about the focalizing, this degree is about the focalizing of our complex inner potentialities in a harmonic relationship. So either with our relationships, depending on where you're finding Mars in your chart, or in yourself, right? You're taking these the harmony and synthesis represented by a threefold consciousness has to develop a harmonious and well integrated way of life. And Mars is really supporting this, and was in a trine to Neptune at this point too. So it's a realization of interdependence, not codependency, interdependence. We can't separate these parts of ourselves necessarily. So Pollux, right, is the head of the southern twin, the immortal twin right here, in the Gemini constellation. These are the two gods of Sparta, right? Or in the Roman, and that's Greek, right? But in the Roman aspect, it is Hercules and Apollo, and Pollux is the Herculean representation, right? Technically mortal, but half immortal because, Zeus is the father of Hercules. So that's interesting. It is actually the nature of Mars, this degree, that Pollux, the fixed star Pollux is the nature of Mars. And so to Mars to be here is giving us an incredible amount of power. So we have Venus that is really bringing us into the self-discipline and really showing us in our material reality what is going to allow us to draw our personal power from. And then you have Mars in Cancer, which is again at the head of Hercules or the Spartans, right? Watch 300 if you ever want to get an idea about the badassery of the Spartans in the larger Greek society. But it is the nature of Mars. So there is, it can be really, really direct. But we can use this energy as a warrior to pull these potentials together within us. And again, find a harmonic and concrete way of interaction. And Neptune being part of this process with Pisces. So much of the moon in Pisces today is really linked to this. The need to unconsciously accept our own limitations. So keep that in mind too, right? Because Mars doesn't accept limitations. Mars just goes and goes and goes. And in Cancer, it's been very protective, like I said, and also very, can be very rash and hasty in some ways. You got that chariot energy that's just like, I'm going. And I got all of my armor and I'm ready to go and act on this, I'm ready to act on this, whatever it is, protection. There's a lot of healing involved with Mars and Cancer from the collective. But now Mars is just like, I'm ready to act on this. I'm ready to actually put all of this ambition and courage and bravery into some sort of action. So remember that it's meant to be in a way that is sustaining and supporting where we are each the most at home, right? Where we gather our personal power from, right? Is in these relationships. And it doesn't have to be your literal family of origin. I mean, some people will be, but it also can be within you, within your own process, your ancestry, the traditions, your larger regional or tribal identity, your spiritual community, all of these things. It's really about these tight, intimate bonds where we feel safe. And Mars is ready to act, and it's going, and to have Pollux involved is very strong, and kind of feels like a war cry in some ways. But again, it's about consolidating. Oh, there's just so much like kind of bringing it in, guys. It's time to bring it in and see where the path is, and know that we are actually protected all around us as we go into this new territory. Wow. Okay, so that is really that's really the astrology of today. And there's not a lot, but at the same time, there's just so much that's happened over the weekend that has led us to this point. So we're going to step away from this part, and we're going to get into the intuitive reading for today, so we can see how much we cannot stop what's coming. All right. Let's see. But there is a lot of inspiration today. There is the ability to really harness and bring in our own magical mastery, and the ability to really step away from being totally enmeshed, which is going to seem really counterintuitive. But again, we can utilize the Orion starseed and that solar plexus area to really help with this process. So 10 of Cups, this is a Mars and Pisces energy, okay? So having Mars in Cancer, trine to Neptune in Pisces, this is being satiated. This is a very direct and very forceful overflow of energy, right? This is not just like flowing over. It's forceful. It's direction. You know, Mars rules Aries, which is cardinal fire, but this is about the emotional realm, okay? So the energy coming into this moment, this is a lot of yesterday. This is a lot of the sun meeting the North Node. This is Mars in a trine to Neptune in Pisces. We are full emotionally, but what does it really mean? We're seeking for this completion and fulfillment, and there's a lot of optimism here, and there's a lot of love that is combining all these different elements together, and this is the beginning and end simultaneously of a cycle, right? The waters are resting in their final grounds here, and we find ourselves back at the beginning, right? Back to the Ace of Cups. So this causal energy is really where we found ourselves by the end of this weekend, especially with Mars trine Neptune. Wow, this path of the spiritual warrior has gotten very narrow, but we had to come to a point of fullness in order to get here so that we can, in fact, start over. Whatever that means to us. Again, that really depends on your own chart in terms of a personalized experience. But as a collective, we are all feeling this trine between Mars and Neptune, and we find ourselves at the end of an emotional cycle and now at the beginning of it simultaneously. And Mars is really pushing, because you know why? Because Mars rules Aries, and what comes after Pisces but Aries? And so Mars really kind of just like, ramps it up and gets it going, like really is that final push to finish the cycle. And so here we are in this present moment. Here's our Queen of Discs. Now, this came up last week too, so you can see that a lot of what's happening, here's our Venus energy. And usually the Venus energy has to do with the princess in this deck, but you'll see there are two queens here. So the feminine and the feminine energy that is in control, right? She is in control. She is responsible for more than just herself. This is the emotional element, the queen, right? Is the emotional element that is now taking responsibility for everything around her. The Queen of Discs is about security for the family, right? Oh, here's that Cancer energy. Now, Queen of Discs is Sagittarius moving into Capricorn, because there is more than just herself and her immediate family that she's responsible for. She is responsible for the entire physical matrix that is unfolding from the collective belief system. But this is really us here at the center. Strong, sensitive, calm, practical, holding the world in our hands, knowing that we have the capacity to take responsibility for everything that we are emotionally connected to, right? Fertility. This is a person who is responsible for the security of her home, her family, and all of her resources, okay? This is us here. And you can feel the consolidation into this energy. Each of us having to take up this role in some way, shape, or form as we move through this eclipse portal. Now, at the base of this energetically, here's another queen, the queen of forces. Now, here is our Venus in the weaving mode as well, right? We balancing the contrasts, creativity and receptivity all at the same time. This is a sorceress, right? And she is able to balance the night and the day, the sun and the moon, the polarity aspects within us. She is the means to balance that out. And so there is a balancing of the eclipse energy here at the energetic root, where we're really able to, it hasn't quite manifested into our awareness yet, but it is operating under the surface, especially if we allow ourselves to connect to this energy. Like I said, combination of receptivity and creativity at the root here. And you're going to see with this guidance, we'll go into it more specifically, but there is a lot of inspiration here with the moon in Pisces, meeting Fomalhaut, meeting Jupiter, Neptune in Pisces, incredible inspiration that seemingly comes from outside of us. And this is us being able to balance the forces of weaving it all together in order to come to a strong containment system when Venus moves into Cancer tomorrow. It's going to be very obvious to us. It's going to be palpable. It is something that we feel in our bodies, in our relationships, in the world around us. But this is about bringing in our power to balance these contrasts, specifically the eclipse energy, right? The sun, the full moon, that was an eclipse, balancing it out, because it's no joke. It's very, very potent. So what do we see here at the top of our awareness? Oh, Archangel Gabriel. This actually responds, Archangel Raphael actually has connected to Regulus in terms of the fixed star, which is the last degree of Leo. But this, as terms of our awareness, where is our awareness, our collective conscious awareness is on healing, right? This is where it's really being directed, is on healing, miracles, family healing and miracles. Archangel Raphael often comes in the guise of an actual person, a human. And so look for others to help you, right? We're looking to help each other, right? To be this for ourselves, to be this for other people, to find this in other people that are offering assistance, offering healing. And this portends a time of great achievement when Raphael comes in. He's got the rose quartz pink energy over the heart chakra, the green orb as well that is related to the heart chakra. So this is such a beautiful healing energy that is at the top of our awareness, where we're directing our conscious attention. And I will say too that this is also something that is going to come around with this third quarter square, because it's a sun in Gemini and a moon in Pisces when it's going to happen. And that's a crisis of our consciousness. What are we going to be conscious of as we move through the rest of this cycle? Are we going to be conscious of our expression through the release of our past, which is the full moon lunar eclipse had absolutely brought about? Or are we going to be conscious in that moment, emotionally and feeling based with the moon, of our initiation? That's up to each of us, right? It's a transient moment, and it really represents how the last quarter of this incredible lunar cycle that started with a new moon in Taurus it really is going to represent what we actually are conscious of as this cycle unfolds. And if we get hyper fixated, I would say, on the moon aspect in Pisces, about the initiation part into our spiritual nature, basically, I think that it can be, I think that if we get hyper fixated on that aspect, I think that it just depends on how we look at it. But the sun, being our expression of ourselves, is about letting go of the past, completely liquidating our past so that we can move into new territory. And this energy is really about our conscious awareness of the healing potential here. And not even the potential, but the fact that it's actually happening, and that there are there's a guide, right? There is some measure of guidance and help that is coming through in order to fulfill this. Now, what is coming is futility, right? Nothing can stop what is coming, right? That is what Saturn and Pluto in a conjunction in January 2020 really represented. Nothing can stop it. So no matter what our mind does in order to, trick ourselves, trick other people, there's going to be all kinds of mental imagery, all kinds of thoughts, communications, ideas coming in that is going to try to trick us, to confuse us, to cheat us, whatever. And this can come from our own mind just as easily. I mean, I'm not suggesting that it's always going to be from the outside, but this is suggesting here that no matter what, nothing can stop it. It's futile. No matter how many ideas and thoughts and juggling and intentional confusing is going to come in, and it will come in because it's going to try to push us off our center. Nothing can stop it. And so you can see things for what they are. And this is an unmasking of illusions. The 7 of all of the suits is that fall from grace. And so there is oh boy. This has made itself very clear to me on multiple levels, and a conversation that is not for this particular transmission, but they're going to come out of the woodwork to try so desperately, and it's not going to happen. And they're going to come out because we are getting centered, right? We are coming into our power in order to secure what is important to us, in order to protect our most treasured and valued relationships, in order to stand firm and lock arms with those who we deem as our family. And it's our human family, right? Those who want humanity to survive. So there will be a challenge, and they will come from all directions to try to cheat and to juggle and confuse. And there's just no way. It doesn't matter. So, I mean, even our clever minds can't stop what is coming. And so that's something to keep in mind as we go through all of this energy right now. So what can we use as guidance? Well, we have first, the muse, right? This is inspiration from that 12th house Pisces place, right? This is heightened resourcefulness, inventiveness. When it comes to the Queen of Forces, our ability to actually be receptive and create at the same time. What are we getting out of this full moon lunar eclipse right now is coming to us through divine inspiration. But the only way that we can really do this, I feel, and this is what is really strongly shown here, is that we have got to take this bird's eye view. We have got to step back, right? And being too enmeshed in the situation means we have to take a step back, right? And see things from a much bigger perspective, and take a fresh look, because if we've lost perspective because we're too enmeshed in the situation, how can we possibly balance anything, right? Or how can we even be inspired divinely or spiritually if we are too enmeshed in the situation? And it's easy to get enmeshed. There are things happening right now that are so challenging. And I can speak personally to this. So I know that even as much as it's hard and it's challenging, we do actually have to step back and see the bigger picture for all of our healing and this entire, global process of karmic, I don't want to say retribution. That's not the right word. It's just the karma of the situation. We have to see it for what it is. Now, sometimes we get so enmeshed in these situations, it's because it comes from this guilt, right? That we are not doing enough. So we have to do and do and do. And then we get way too embroiled in the situation. And so this is about true detachment, objective compassion. It's not being cold and calculated, which unfortunately the Orion starseed signature can seem like that. But if you see it as the true detachment, the objective compassion, just because you're able to master the Gemini energy and the magician energy, the mercurial energy, just because you're pruning things back does not mean that you're not compassionate or that you are not engaged wholeheartedly in the battle on one side or the other. Doesn't mean that you don't have a position. It's just that you're you're capable of stepping back and practicing objective compassion. How else are we going to link all of humanity together into one network if we can't do this? Okay. And we want to be divinely inspired. We're being primed for it. So we have to take a step back so that then we can really energetically root ourselves as this master of balancing the sun and the moon, okay? But we have to take a step back, okay? And it's not to say that there aren't things to be done. And you know what needs to be done when the time arrives, right? Mars is ready to act, but Mars is realizing that the best action that can be taken is to learn how to work together with those that you are closest to in order to heal, in order to resolve ancestral karma, trauma. This is big. Lots of contracts are coming to a close right now, and it's happening right now. So take a step back, and realize that this divine inspiration is going to come from this bird's eye view. And with the moon in Pisces, I mean, there's no getting around that too. And then as it comes to our healing, right? The miracles that Archangel Raphael represents, where our conscious awareness is right now. The penguin, the period of darkness that you've been experiencing is now passing, which is going, again, to seem counterintuitive because we're just like, well, what if it's just starting now? What if the real work is starting now? Well, we've gone through so much that has primed us to be able to step into this role of and to this awareness of true healing. So we've learned invaluable lessons over the last year, okay? And Pluto is still going to be going through all of this up until January 2022 when it comes out of its shadow, retrograde shadow, okay? Same thing with Saturn. Saturn's going to go direct in October along with Pluto and then going to come out of its shadow. So we're learning a lot and we've learned so much already. And then we can face these challenges with courage, with Mars as our agent of courage. But it hasn't come without a price, right? And we've been in a lot of challenging situations that are leading us to apply those lessons right now to the healing, right? And the divine physician being reversed, I think, is so curious, and it can go a couple different ways. It really depends on how you want to apply this to your personal experience. But traditionally, when it's reversed, it's suggesting that you have to put more energy back on self-healing and self-care and to do inner healing work on yourself and to be mindful of the thoughts and the words that we use. And this is, I think, really part of the Mercury retrograde. Now look at him. He's got the caduceus right here. This is Mercury to a T on his chest. Remember, Archangel Raphael. Let's go back to it real quick. Raphael, right? He's got the healing heart chakra here, the rose quartz, the pink, right? And then the green orb, the healing of the green orb again. And Gabriel is the messenger. And so there's the caduceus kind of energy involved here too. But we are looking at the divine physician, number 6, the healing energy. You can see just beaming Reiki at this woman. He's got the bucket, you have to go into the well to get the water. That's what this divine physician, and I mean, it's no accident that they make him look kind of like the, Judeo-Christian version of Jesus, because Jesus did these types of things. He healed people. He performed miracles of healing, right? Among other things. And so, but being reversed, I think we just need to, really reflect with that Mercury retrograde, cut back the things that are extraneous, do the work in terms of our immediate environment, and cut back what's unnecessary, be willing to review our notes, be willing to go back over this territory so that when Mercury comes out of its shadow period, it's going to go direct right around the time of the solstice, actually, that we are, by the time we get back to this position, we will have already pruned so much off, and then we come back here and it'll be the last little bit that we have to, really cut away. And so I think this is about, we still have work to do on ourselves, this healing. And again, Mars in Cancer, right? Consolidating our energy. It's really about where we're drawing our personal power from. Whereas, there is a sense here at the heart of the matter that we are responsible for everything else around us, the home and the family, but the security of it. That's a very Capricorn energy. Cancer is not necessarily about the security. It's more about the nourishment and the nurturing and the protection. Capricorn is much more about the larger security and the structure that provides something we can all relate to. So there is a sense here that at the heart of it, we are feeling the larger responsibility to the collective. But this does bring up, at least for me, that there's still more work to do on our own healing, right? And to kind of get down to it within ourselves about how to heal, spiritual healing, okay? Divine healing, the divine physician. So whatever it is we need to do to start really considering these aspects of healing within ourselves is really going to support the larger context of a healing miracle coming forward, because that is where our awareness is. This is where our conscious attention is meant to be, what we're looking for. And we've done a lot of work already, and we're coming out of it, and there's still more to do, but we can really activate this healing miracle and bring this force into our life. But we do have to still do the work on the inside, right? That's what this Mercury retrograde does feel very healing in some ways. And pulling back all of the dead foliage that is really just draining the energy of the plant in order to grow. And we are each the plant, right? Or some aspect of the plant. And it's important that we give ourselves all of the resources in order to grow and to heal. And if we have parts of ourselves that need to go, then this is really what it represents to me. So guys, that is the transmission for today. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. Thank you for being here. If you're interested in a reading or energy work to support your process, you can book through catalystenergies.net. That is in the description box below. You can also find Catalyst Energies on Facebook and Telegram in terms of social media connection. And of course, always we'll be here for the daily medicine transmission and through Thursday, the weekly astrology on Friday live in the mornings. And it'd be great to see how everybody's doing. Thank you for being here. I do truly appreciate it. I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow for the daily. Take care of yourselves. Let me know if you need any support. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.